Hello and welcome live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Gautam Roy, and coming up in the next 30 minutes. The Hamas defies Trump's ultimatum, says the US president's repeated threats encourage Israel to evade ceasefire terms. France offers intel to Ukraine and extending its nuclear umbrella to Europe as the EU leaders meet to discuss giving more help to Kyiv. And the Kremlin says Macron doesn't want peace. His nuclear rhetoric is a threat to Russia. First up, the latest update coming in from West Asia, where the Hamas has accused US President Donald Trump of using repeated threats against Palestinians to support Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to disregard the fragile ceasefire. In a text message, Hamas' spokesperson said, and I quote, "The best track to release the remaining Israeli prisoners is by the occupation going into the second phase and compelling it to adhere to the agreement signed under the sponsorship of mediators." Now, the Hamas's response has come after US President Donald Trump threatened the Palestinian group with severe consequences if all hostages are not freed. US Hostage Affairs envoy Adam Boehler has been authorized to talk directly with Hamas, a big departure from decades of old policy against negotiating with groups that the US brands as terrorist organizations. Meanwhile, the US has vehemently rejected the alternative Gaza reconstruction plan proposed by Arab leaders. Take a look at this report.
US President Donald Trump delivered a stern ultimatum to Hamas, demanding release of all remaining hostages in Gaza or face destruction. In a forceful statement, Trump wrote, and I quote, "Salom Hamas means hello and goodbye, you can choose. Release all of the hostages now, not later, and immediately return all of the dead bodies of the people you have murdered, or it's over for you. Only sick and twisted people keep bodies, and you are sick and twisted. I'm sending Israel everything it needs to finish the job. Not a single Hamas member will be safe you don't do as I say. I have just met with your former hostages whose lives you have destroyed. This is your last warning. For the leadership, now is the time to leave Gaza while you still have a chance. Also, to the people of Gaza, a beautiful future awaits, but not if you hold hostages. If you do, you are dead. Make a smart decision. Release the hostages now, or there will be hell to pay later." In another development in a significant break from the decades old policy, the US President Donald Trump administration has been conducting secret talks with Hamas to negotiate the possible release of American hostages. Talking to Hamas breaks a long standing taboo against negotiating with groups the US sees as terrorist organizations. White House said US Hostage Affairs envoy Adam Boehler has the authority to talk directly with Hamas.
Well, when it comes to the negotiations that you're referring to, first of all, the special envoy who's engaged in those negotiations does have the authority to talk to anyone. Israel was consulted on this matter. And look, dialogue and talking to people around the world to do what's in the best interest of the American people is something that the president has proven is what he believes is good faith effort to do what's right for the American people.
Besides this, European nations unequivocally stated that Hamas must be stripped of its governing role in the Gaza Strip. On Tuesday, Egypt presented Gaza reconstruction in the Arab League summit in Cairo, which was outrightly rejected by Israel. However, Hamas has welcomed the Arab proposal to rebuild the Gaza Strip under a future Palestinian Authority administration. The plan is also seen as a counter to President Trump's proposal for US control and resettlement of Gaza's residents. Earlier in February, President Trump posted a AI-generated video promoting the transformation of Gaza into a Gulf state-like resort. Under the redevelopment plan for Gaza, he wants to clean out the population of about 2 million people to create the Riviera of the Middle East. Aman Kumar Himanshu's report for DD India.
In the meantime, Israel's government has initiated proceedings to dismiss Attorney General Gali Baharav Miara, who was the vocal critic of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. On Wednesday, Israeli Justice Minister said the move was over inappropriate conduct and prolonged disagreements between the government and the Attorney General. Baharav Miara, a fierce defendant of the judiciary's independence, has often taken positions that clash with Netanyahu's government. Rihan Sharab, a 38-year-old resident of Khan Yunis in Gaza, has begun making Ramadan lanterns out of assistance boxes to cheer up her kids. Sharab began making vibrant lanterns in a temporary tent next to the wreckage of their family home, as there were no Ramadan lanterns available at the neighborhood markets. Her job is severely hampered by the scarcity of raw materials and regular power disruptions. She is offering the lanterns at affordable prices, ranging from 5 to 30 shekels due to the low demand this year. German Conservative leader Friedrich Merz met with other leaders of the European Union on Thursday after talks with the Commission's President Ursula von der Leyen and Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas. EU Council President Antonio Costa received Merz in Brussels on Thursday, and earlier on Wednesday, Merz met NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte as Germany considers a major funding boost for Ukraine. And the Kremlin condemned what it called a highly confrontational speech by French President Emmanuel Macron, in which he called Russia a threat to Europe and said Paris would consider putting other countries under its nuclear protection. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said the French leader's address to the nation were an indication that Paris was looking to prolong the conflict in Ukraine.
Their speech is really extremely confrontational. It can hardly be perceived as a speech by a head of state who is thinking about peace. Rather, from what was said, one can conclude that France is thinking about war, about continuing the war.
Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the French president's nuclear rhetoric posed a threat to his country. And after pausing military aid to Ukraine, US has now cut off its intelligence sharing with Kyiv, curbing its ability to target Russian forces. The move raises significant pressure, pushing Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to come to the negotiating table. French President Emmanuel Macron has offered to extend the country's nuclear deterrent to its partners, while EU leaders have gathered in Brussels for a special summit to discuss the Ukraine crisis and offer more help to Ukraine. Here's more in this report.
In a fresh move to increase significant pressure on Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to cooperate in a peace deal, the United States has cut off its intelligence sharing with Ukraine, impacting Kyiv's ability to defend itself from Russian forces. Since the war began in 2022, US intelligence has been vital to Ukraine's battlefield strategy. Marking a significant shift in US policy, CIA Director John Ratcliffe confirmed the decision on Wednesday. US is also reconsidering its pause in funding for Ukraine, which was announced by Donald Trump.
I believe what the National Security Council told me in regards to that was that they paused or they are reconsidering the funding for Ukraine.
Ukrainian President Zelensky hailed the announcement, calling it a positive movement in talks with Washington, hinting at a potential high-level meeting soon. On Tuesday, while addressing the US Congress, Trump revealed that he had received a letter from Zelensky signaling Kyiv's willingness to engage in peace talks.
Everyone can see how quickly diplomatic events are unfolding. Today, our teams, Ukraine and the United States, have begun working on a meeting. Andrei Yermak and Michael Waltz have spoken, and there is a positive movement. We hope for the first results next week.
4 senior members of Donald Trump's entourage held telephonic conversation with some of the Ukrainian president's top political opponents and discussed the possibility of Ukraine presidential elections. After US announcement, European leaders extended their support for Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron announced that he would discuss extending France's nuclear deterrent to European partners and raised the possibility of sending European troops to Ukraine to enforce a peace deal.
La semaine prochaine, nous réunirons à Paris.
As soon as next week, we will gather in Paris army chiefs who wish to take their responsibility in this matter. And so this is a plan for a solid, lasting, verifiable peace which we have prepared with the Ukrainians and several European partners and which I defended in the United States 2 weeks ago and across Europe. And I would like to believe that the United States will stay by our side, but we have to be ready if this isn't the case.
European Union leaders hold a special European Council summit in Brussels on Thursday, aimed to endorse bold steps to increase defense spending and pledge support for Ukraine amid growing concerns the continent can no longer be assured of US security. Bureau Report, DD India.
And now France is also offering intelligence to Ukraine. Its defense minister, Sébastien Lecornu, said on Thursday, a day after Washington suspended intelligence sharing with Kyiv, that an effort is to step up pressure on Ukraine's president to cooperate with the US president in a bid to convene peace talks with Russia.
Our intelligence is sovereign. It's been longer to come back to power in recent years. But the advantage is that we have done it with our own capabilities. So yes, we have intelligence resources that we use to help the Ukrainians.
In a powerful Russian missile strike on a hotel in central Ukrainian city of Kryvyi Rih on Thursday, 4 people have been killed and 31 injured. Ukraine's emergency services posting on social media also said 14 people had been rescued from the rubble of the building. According to officials, more people could still be trapped under rubble and warned a new Russian strike was possible in the same area. Ukrainian military said that Russian forces launched 2 ballistic missiles in addition to 112 drones during the overnight attack. Russian President Vladimir Putin has named Alexander Darchev as the new ambassador to the United States, marking a possible step towards improving relations between the two countries. The US agreed to the appointment after a meeting in Turkey last week, where both sides worked on restoring their embassy operations. 64-year-old Darchev has worked in the US before and was also Russia's ambassador to Canada. This move comes after a shift in US policy, with Donald Trump holding talks with Russia and pausing military aid to Ukraine. Notably, Russia has been without an ambassador in Washington, D.C. since October of last year, following the departure of the previous envoy, Anatoly Antonov. The United Nations has warned it will be forced to halve rations for around 1 million Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh from next month. The UN World Food Programme said in a letter that severe funding shortfalls had forced a cut in monthly food vouchers from $12.5 to $6 per person. The letter comes days before a visit by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who's slated to meet Rohingya refugees. Huge numbers of the persecuted and stateless Rohingya community live in squalid relief camps in Bangladesh, most arriving after having fled from a 2017 military crackdown in neighboring Myanmar. Successive aid cuts have already caused severe hardship among the Rohingya in the overcrowded settlements, who are reliant on aid and suffer from rampant malnutrition. Let's now get you some quick-fire updates as well from around the world. Australian authorities shut down schools, offices and public transport after heavy rains lashed Queensland and northern New South Wales as Cyclone Alfred approached the east coast, packing gusty winds with it. Australia's Weather Bureau has forecast prolonged duration of heavy showers and dangerous flash floods. Home to a large semiconductor industry, Malaysia is holding discussions with chip makers within the country whether they can deal with the potential US tariffs on semiconductors, which may be 25% or more as announced by US President Donald Trump last month. This is also a matter of concern as the Southeast Asian nation's economy is export-driven. As part of a large repatriation effort including 19 chartered flights from the 6th to the 9th of this month for bringing back 1,000 Chinese nationals, the second flight from Myanmar via Thailand departed on Thursday. The action is an outcome of crackdown on cross-border scam operations from fraud compounds in Myanmar, leading to the repatriation of more than 7,000 foreign nationals. Amid major political crisis, Portugal's Prime Minister Luís Montenegro proposed confidence vote motion for his year-long government, risking dismissal. Allegations of profit earning against Montenegro through his consultancy firm's contracts with private companies prompted the move. Now, Pope Francis has had a second restful night after recent respiratory crisis. People across the globe have been wondering over the future of the church since he's been in hospital for the past 3 weeks after suffering from double pneumonia. This is one of the longest stays for the Pope and he's been away from the Vatican for a long time as well. And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. US grants 1-month Canadian and Mexican tariff exemptions for automakers after talks with Ford, General Motors and Stellantis. And Japan as well as Britain are to hold high-level economic security talks.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, the United States on Wednesday granted a 1-month exemption on Donald Trump's new tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada for US automakers. The pause comes after Trump spoke with leaders of the big three automakers, that's Ford, General Motors and Stellantis. On Wednesday, the White House said the US is also open to hearing about other products that should be exempted from the tariffs, which took effect on Tuesday.
We spoke with the big three auto dealers. We are going to give a 1-month exemption on any autos coming through USMCA. Reciprocal tariffs will still go into effect on April 2nd, but at the request of the companies associated with USMCA, the president is giving them an exemption for 1 month so they are not at an economic disadvantage. So the three companies that he spoke to are Stellantis, Ford, and General Motors. They requested the call, they made the ask, and the president is happy to do it. It's a 1-month exemption.
Wall Street stocks rallied after the announcement, with shares of the three automakers each surging about 6% or more. The American Automotive Policy Council said it applauded Trump's move. Just a month. Let's see what happens next. Now, the European Commission has presented an action plan to help make Europe's auto industry more competitive, to help it keep up with peers in China and the US. Joining us with more on this is DW's Chiponda Chimbelu. Chiponda, what can you tell us about this plan? What does it have?
Thanks for having me. Well, this action plan is about driving innovation and ensuring that the auto industry doesn't fall behind when it comes to key technologies such as artificial intelligence. For instance, the EU will provide €1 billion for joint initiatives between the auto industry and the public sector to support the development of self-driving cars in the EU. Now, Brussels also wants to encourage Europeans to buy more electric vehicles, so it will be discussing incentive systems with member states. And that is something that could lead to tax incentives for buyers of EVs across the bloc. And of course, the European Commission is extending the amount of time that car makers have to meet carbon emissions targets for their vehicles. Now, the auto industry will now get 3 years instead of just 1 year. So Brussels is, of course, trying to create a better environment for the auto industry overall.
And Shibana, what is the magnitude of the kind of challenges that Europe's automakers face?
Well, the challenges for the EU's auto industry include high energy costs, the transition to electric vehicles, and of course, US tariffs. And we have already seen that even with the tariffs that Trump has on Canada and Mexico. Volkswagen, Stellantis, and BMW are just some of the European car makers exposed to those tariffs because vehicles and car parts travel across the border several times during production. And the prospect of steel and aluminum tariffs could also drive up materials costs for car makers. And that would, of course, only add to the woes that European car makers already face. They have already been struggling with the transition to electric vehicles. And of course, the major players, Volkswagen, Stellantis, Renault, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz have all struggled to keep up with competition from Chinese car makers in particular. Last year, 6 of the top 10 selling EV brands were Chinese players.
Okay. And Shibana, will European car makers then be able to keep up?
It is worth asking whether this action plan is too little and, of course, too late. Now, if we look at the leading EV seller in the world, it is, of course, Chinese car maker BYD, and it is so dominant that it accounts for nearly a quarter of the electric vehicle market. And that is, of course, more than quadruple the market share of Volkswagen, which is, of course, Europe's biggest car maker. So, of course, European car makers may struggle to keep up. But policymakers in the EU will be working hard to support the industry because it does play a major role in the economy. It actually accounts for 7% of the EU's GDP and employs around 14 million people, according to the European Commission. And there are many cities and regions whose whole economies depend on the auto industry. So this isn't just about the economy, it is also political. And here in Germany, for instance, last year, Chancellor Olaf Scholz made comments about Volkswagen's cost-cutting plans, which of course included slashing jobs. And in Italy, the government has also weighed in on Stellantis' plans for its Fiat factories over there. So it's not a surprise that the EU has stepped in with this action plan for the auto industry.
Well, let's see if it makes any difference. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment, Chiponda Chimbelu from Berlin. Now, Japan and Britain are arranging to hold high-level economic security talks on Friday until US tariffs rear their head. It will be the first time for Japan and the United Kingdom to hold a 2+2 meeting focused on economic matters. Both are US allies, but that factor is not likely to exempt them from President Donald Trump's sweeping levies on major trading partners. Joint talks between the countries' foreign and trade ministers in Tokyo this week have been touted as a chance to promote free trade and strengthen business ties in sectors from tech and defense to renewable energy. UK Foreign Office has said in a statement that economic growth and future prosperity depend upon strong security foundations, a reliable trading system, and an economy resilient to shocks. South Korea and the United States will begin their annual Freedom Shield military exercise from Monday amid rising threats from North Korea, informed Seoul's Joint Chiefs of Staff. The joint drills are aimed to strengthen the readiness of the alliance for realistic threats such as North Korea's military strategy and tactics, according to JCS's statement. The joint military exercise will end on the 20th of this month. Now, as the world gets ready to observe International Women's Day on the 8th of March, India will celebrate the significant strides the country has made in promoting women's empowerment and gender equality through various policies, schemes and legislative measures. The theme for 2025, for all women and girls' rights, equality, empowerment, emphasizes the need for inclusive action to unlock equal rights, power and opportunities for all. India is witnessing a transition from women's development to women-led development, ensuring equal participation in national progress. Some of the key focus areas for women's upliftment have been in education, health and nutrition, economic empowerment and financial inclusion, digital and technological empowerment, among others. India is home to over 10.45 crore, that's 104.5 million scheduled tribe individuals, comprising 8.6% of the total population, representing a vast and diverse tribal heritage. The Government of India has demonstrated a strong commitment to the socio-economic development of scheduled tribes by taking several initiatives based on a multi-pronged approach. The overall budget for the development of scheduled tribes has risen from 10,237.33 crore rupees in 2024-25 to 14,925.81 crore rupees in 25-26, marking an impressive 45.79% increase. In line with this commitment, the Tribal Cooperative Marketing Development Federation of India Limited, under the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, has been actively working to enhance the marketing and economic conditions of tribal communities. TriFed's mission is to promote the socio-economic development of tribal communities through marketing development of tribal products. Sports now, and Naomi Osaka lost 6-4, 6-4 to Camila Osorio in the first round of Indian Wells on Wednesday. The former world number 1 struggled to find her rhythm after recovering from an abdominal injury that made her withdraw from the Australian Open. Though she showed glimpses of her powerful game, Osaka admitted it was the worst match of her life. Currently ranked 52, Osorio used clever drop shots and slices to unsettle Osaka, breaking her serve in both sets. It was Osorio's first ever win at Indian Wells, an historic moment as she became the first Colombian woman to beat a former world number 1. And that's all we have for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS. You can scan the QR code on the screen and download the app right away. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.